Hey everyone, today we're going to be talking about sentence fragments. So specifically, we are going to examine some examples and we'll talk about what's wrong with them. We will also talk about what complete sentences require. We will define sentence fragments, and we'll talk about the 3 different ways that we can fix them. So first, let's examine these examples. The first example says, a football player with no experience. Number 2. The bike came in many colors, such as blue, purple, and green. And finally, which is why I laughed. Now that you've heard all 3 examples read out loud, you probably have noticed that there's something really wrong with them. If you can't exactly pinpoint what it is that's wrong with them, I'll tell you. These examples are incomplete sentences. They're known as what's called sentence fragments. So today, we're going to be talking about what complete sentences require, and then we'll talk about how we can fix sentence fragments when we see them happening in writing. So first, like I said, let's define complete sentences. So complete sentences are also known as independent clauses. Independent clauses need to have a subject, a verb, and they must express a complete thought. So to give you a couple reminders, a subject is simply a person or thing that the sentence is about. A verb is something the subject is doing in the sentence. And a complete thought just lets us know what the sentence is about. Examples of this would be, the dog ran toward the stick, or the girl drew a picture of a beautiful flower. Now, complete sentences can also have objects or things that actions are performed on. They can have adjectives or adverbs, which are those descriptive words. And they can also have dependent clauses. Now, dependent clauses are simply phrases that provide extra information to the sentence. Examples of that would be, the pen ink flowed on the paper easily, or since it was rotten, I didn't eat the apple. Now that we've defined complete sentences, let's take a look at what sentence fragments are. So sentence fragments then would lack a subject, they'd be missing a verb, they do not express a complete thought, or it's a dependent clause without an independent clause. Again, reminder, a dependent clause is simply a phrase that adds more information to a sentence, but it's not a complete sentence, so it cannot stand by itself. An independent clause, like I just told you, is a complete sentence, so it can stand on their own. So now that we're starting to talk about sentence fragments, I wanted to let you know what the common error is that I see all the time in students' writing. I see things like this. Since it was rotten, I didn't eat the apple. For some reason, there are a lot of people that feel like the dependent clause, since it was rotten, can stand on its own as its own independent sentence. However, that's not the case. A dependent clause always needs to be attached to an independent clause. Now, before we move on to talk about how we can fix sentence fragments, I wanted to talk about why it's so easy for us to write in sentence fragments. And I really feel like it's easy for us to write in sentence fragments because we often speak in them. So for an example, if I ask you what you had for lunch today, you would probably just say a sandwich. You would answer that question in a sentence fragment. You would probably not answer, well, Mrs. Johnson, today for lunch I had a sandwich. Okay, we don't speak robotically. So I really think that we write in sentence fragments because we so often speak in them. So now on these next few slides, I want to talk about the 3 different ways that we can fix sentence fragments when we see them in our writing. So the first way is that you can add a subject or a verb. For my example, I am looking at the first example from our very first slide. Our sentence now that we have made our fix says, a football player with no experience joined the football team. I've used that word joined, I've added a verb, and I've expressed a complete thought. Going back to our second example, I'm going to use my second strategy to fix a sentence fragment. That second strategy states that we can add or remove the appropriate punctuation to combined sentences. So I took out that period after colors and replaced it with a comma. And now my example reads, "The bike came in many colors such as blue, purple, and green." And my last strategy is to join the dependent clause with the independent clause. Originally, the sentence just said, "which is why I laughed." That is a dependent clause. To fix it, I've added the independent clause. "The joke was funny, which is why I laughed." So these are the three different ways that we can fix a sentence fragment. For our next steps, I'd like us to apply what we've learned. So I'd like you to take out your sentence correction sheet. Remember, we're working on sentence correction sheet set 3 and 4. I'd like you to correct sentence 2 and 3 under set 4, and then make sure you check your work by watching the answer video. And then, as always, continue working on the no red ink assignment, no red ink set 3 and 4. If you have any questions about anything that I've talked to you about in this video, don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks for watching, everyone.